myself right here, and that's wild. Hi. Oh, Snacks might move for me, we'll see. My name's Sam, one of the animal keepers here at Busch Gardens. Alongside me is Jason. And we do take care of the American alligators here, but also pretty much any reptile that you do see around the park. So that's going to include your snakes, your lizards, your turtles and tortoises, and your crocodilians, such as the American alligator, but also our slender crocodile in our Nairobi area. Today I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about our alligators here in this front Gator Lake, and then I'll open up to any questions you guys have at the end, okay? Alrighty, so in this habitat we do have 9 adult male American alligators. All these guys are ranging from their late 20s to early 30s, all about 10 to 12 feet in length, about 600 to 800 pounds. These are our oldest alligators on property though. Our oldest alligator, his name is Cutie, he's actually just recently retired to one of our back pools. We estimate he's in his late 60s or early 70s. We don't know exactly how old he is because he did come to us from the wild back in the 1980s. He was deemed a nuisance alligator. If you guys don't know what that term means, any animal that's lost its natural fear of people is often deemed a nuisance. Now what's something people love to do, you see all the time squirrels and birds, with wild animals, they definitely shouldn't.
Feed them.
Feed them, absolutely, bingo. Yeah, so feed wild animals. So you definitely don't want to ever feed a wild animal because they start to lose their natural kind of fear of us. And they start to learn a behavior in which they're going to approach people expecting food. Obviously, that's very dangerous, and those animals pretty much don't unlearn that behavior. So back in the 1980s, Cutie was deemed a nuisance alligator, and because they weren't doing the greatest in the wild, Fish and Wildlife asked us if we had room for him, which we did, so he's been here ever since. And you're probably thinking to yourself, they weren't doing the greatest. Yeah, in fact, alligators were at one point on the brink of extinction. Back in 1967, these guys were placed on the endangered species list, and they were listed as endangered, which means they're very likely to go extinct. Then in 1973, the Endangered Species Act was passed. Now the government kind of put in some regulations, some protections in place for those animals on that list. For the American alligator, 2 things were kind of protected or put into place. First was hunting for these guys was banned. So they were hunted for their skin and their meat, for all sorts of things. And that actually was completely unregulated and affected their populations. The other thing that was banned was a chemical fertilizer and pesticide known as DDT. It was used for all sorts of plants back then, and then they started to realize that it was affecting animal populations. You've probably seen it with the bald eagle, but for the American alligator, it was actually affecting their eggs. So their eggs weren't able to fully develop and hatch, and so combine those 2 issues together, and after those protections put into place, now it kind of helped stabilize their population, and then breeding programs were started with zoos and aquariums in combination with Fish and Wildlife. So what Busch Gardens would do, because we were a part of those breeding programs, is we would send off our hatchlings and our eggs off to Fish and Wildlife, and they'd raise them up to a certain size and reintroduce them back into the wild. That was obviously very, very successful because you probably noticed they're all over the place these days. At the lowest point, they estimated only about 5,000 alligators were left in nature. Now there's over 1.5 million alligators in the state of Florida alone.
Paying
We're
attention.
not the state with the most alligators though. Does anybody know what state that is? Louisiana! Yeah, Louisiana has well over 2 million alligators. So, awesome conservation success story. Super important that we keep these guys in nature, and you can definitely tell your friends that someone says you can't bring back an animal from brink of extinction. Just point to the alligator. And why are they so important to have in nature? Well, these guys are an apex predator. They're the top of the food chain. And that's critical for the ecosystems that they're in, because if you take away the apex predator, now it starts to kind of break apart the ecosystem below it. So, if you took the alligator out of nature, the things that they mainly eat, about 80% of their diet is going to be fish and turtles. So now there's going to be more fish and more turtles, which is going to make it, there be less plants in the water. It's going to affect the water quality, which is going to start to affect any other sea life and waterway life. So it just spirals out of control. So it's super important that these guys are in nature because they help balance our ecosystem. The other thing that's super cool and important about these guys is that when they're first hatched, they're only about 6 to 8 inches in length. And they do hatch out of an egg, just like a chicken. So they're about 6 to 8 inches in length, and they are prey for tons and tons of species. Pretty much anything they're eating at this size can eat them when they're first hatched. Things like fish, turtles, snakes, birds, some mammals, and then mammals that they won't necessarily eat at this size, but will occasionally prey on them, are things like bobcats and black bears. So pretty important to have them in nature because they help provide for tons and tons of species. Alligators are reptiles, like I said at the beginning of the talk. What makes reptiles so cool, you've probably heard the term